Welcome, Jim, again. It was a nice talking to you in our previous podcast. We learned about your background. Where did you born? How did you started with the computers? And you went into chemistry, and then you went into banking. You moved from the UK to all the way to Thailand and Hong Kong and Bermuda. And last we learned you were back in New Zealand, actually. So I'd like to understand from your perspective, given that you have worked in and lived in so many different countries, it's very important to know what was your experience like in New Zealand and how does it contrast with, let's say, Thailand or maybe even back home in the UK? Like, what were the key differences there in New Zealand?
I think the key difference was New Zealand's quieter.
Right, right.
You compare like the UK, I lived in smallest cities, reasonable amount of people, a lot of stuff happening. You move to like Hong Kong and all the people, all the things.
Right.
New Zealand is a very quiet place.
Mhm.
This Auckland, kind of the main big city,
Yeah,
is busy-ish, but
correct.
it's definitely a very quiet, relaxed place. There's a lot of definitely a lot of the younger generation of New Zealand, when they kind of hit their university years, they want to leave because there's just not much going on in New Zealand.
Right.
Uh, but it's great because you've got the space, you've got the quiet, you've
Mhm.
got a good beach not that far away. I mean, we lived literally 5-minute walk to the beach,
Yeah.
which was nice, especially when you've got a young child. Just having that ability to go to the beach was
Mhm.
great. The company I worked for was very kind of relaxed. The whole New Zealand culture it's pretty relaxed,
Mhm.
pretty fun. The company really kind of cared about everybody as well. And it was just having that emphasis on we enjoy doing things together. So it's a culturally, it was quite a nice place. It's if you like the quiet.
That-
It's a
Yeah.
place where what do you do at the weekend? You might go climb a mountain or go skiing in the winter because a few mountains in the middle of the island that's North and South Island where you can go skiing, or you might go swimming. It's a lot very outdoorsy. Whereas compared to like Hong Kong, you might go hiking, but then you might go and sit on a boat somewhere, or you might go and eat and drink and party. New Zealand definitely wasn't a party country, so it's kind of nice and relaxing, I would
That
say.
makes sense. And I think the population in New Zealand is also probably 3 million or something, right? That's where pretty much it
Yeah, it's about 3 or 4 million, of which a million of them live in the Auckland area.
right.
So, you
Space
know,
is immense. And it's mostly agrarian society, right? Mostly it's agriculture and food crops and all. Like that's what the major economy is there in New Zealand. Is that fair
um,
description?
yeah, I mean, there is definitely a lot of agriculture there. A lot. The joke, there's more sheep than people. It's true. So there's a lot of agriculture that happens there. A lot of the universities are focused on that area. There's a few tech companies that are starting up out there, being quite successful. Um, but yeah, it's definitely not like a big tech superpower, but there's a few good tech companies based out there. Tourism obviously is huge. The film industry is doing very well. After Lord of the Rings, the film industry there has gone very well. Weta Studios is one of the kind of the top special effects studios in the world. A lot of people go to New Zealand for the scenery. It is beautiful. Yeah, it is probably one of the most beautiful countries on the planet. So yeah, tourism,
Yeah,
agriculture, kind of the big things.
that makes sense. Essentially, like when you said, were you still in tech when you were in New Zealand, or did
Mhm.
you change your strength? You were still there in tech.
Yeah, so I was working for a company that did telematics software. So yeah, you've got a big truck. You put a box to the truck, so you know where the truck is. They're doing things like taxation. So in New Zealand, when you buy petrol, you pay tax on the petrol. When you buy diesel, you don't pay tax, but instead you pay tax afterwards based off the number of miles you drive and the weight of the vehicle. So big heavy vehicles pay more than small vehicles, but only when you're on public roads. So if you're driving on private roads, you don't pay tax. The idea is the tax pays for the roads. If you're not on the roads, why should you pay tax? And
Oh,
so
wow.
these boxes would track, if you're like a logging truck, you drive on the road for a while, then you drive off road to the logging site. back onto the road and drive back. You only pay tax when you're on the road, not when you're off road. So these boxes would track all that kind of stuff. And there's a whole lot of driver compliance as well around, you can only drive for so many hours and then have a break and then so many hours a week. So I was there building mobile apps to kind of track some of that. So, how many hours have you driven so far? You need to have a break. And then things like vehicle inspections. Is my vehicle safe? Before I get my truck, I need to inspect my vehicle. So kind of working on that. Quite a successful company. They were focused a lot in New Zealand, Australia, and they're kind of spreading to the US because the US has a lot of rules around driver compliance, and companies over a certain size now have to have hardware devices to track from when an engine is turned off to when an engine is turned off, who's driving the vehicle to make sure they're compliant with ours. So working there doing mobile apps in Xamarin. It was a great company. Great company. Every Friday afternoon was knock off early. There'd be food, drinks, music, video games. And there's actually a large contingent of Brazilians working for the company. And Brazilians know how to barbecue. And so the manufacturing arm of the company, they built a whole lot of barbecues, the half steel, half oil drum type barbecues for the Brazilians to barbecue meat. So like once every couple of months, the company would buy a whole lot of meat, hand it over to the Brazilians, and they would be there barbecuing all this stuff. And so you'd spend Friday afternoon eating great food, a few drinks, and just relaxing with your friends.
Excellent. So with respect to the culture, right? So you have been in like Hong Kong, you mentioned about like a lot of Asian cuisine and things like that. Thailand must be different from Hong Kong because it has a lot of natural like food and fruits and like tropical environment and beaches, etc. Right? And it's crowded, but it's not as like, I don't think in Thailand you have any city which has so many metro like skyscrapers and like falling on top of your head or something like that, right?
I mean, Bangkok's getting there. It's not as tall as Hong Kong, If you think your average city's here, Bangkok's here and Hong Kong's there. But Bangkok is still
already
a lot of people, a lot of cars. The traffic in Bangkok is terrible.
Yes.
But Bangkok is still a very busy place. Not as much as Hong Kong, but it's definitely up there, substantially more than the Londons and New Yorks of the world.
Yeah, I spent some time in like Phuket and Bangkok, not so much, but Phuket I have been a couple of times. And and of course, Singapore is another area I have been. And so in China, I've been to Beijing, actually, not necessarily Hong Kong. I think maybe I might have gone to the Hong Kong because of Cathay Pacific is the airline that goes through that Hong Kong. So I've been to like the airport, but the airport is not Hong Kong because you can't like really go out or do anything like that. So that's my experience there. Tell me one thing, like in New Zealand, like when you were there, I'm thinking, did you happen to go to Australia also a little bit, or you were pretty much in New Zealand?
Pretty much New Zealand. The only time I went to Australia is there's a tech conference called NDC. There's a whole load around the world, and they do one in Sydney. So I went there to speak at NDC Sydney. So literally, I flew into Sydney. I went to the hotel. I went from the hotel to the convention center, did the conference for a few days, back to the airport, back again. So that's as much as Australia. I mean, it's still a 5-hour flight to get from New Zealand to Australia. It's like a 5-hour flight. So it's not close.
Oh, right. Okay. I thought it's like pretty much like 1 hour and you are there. Like that's what my impression was. No. East to west coast kind of a thing, right? It's almost like that in the US. Like if you travel east to west, it's a red eye flight. Mostly it is like 5.5, 6.5 hours actually one way. Right. That makes sense. So where did you land up next? Like from New Zealand, where did you go further? Now I can't guess. US.
Yeah, so in New Zealand, I'm still doing a lot of community work with Xamarin. I was running a meetup group in Auckland with a few friends for Xamarin. I was asked to write a book about Xamarin. So, I was doing that. So doing a lot of this kind of Xamarin focused community work. And then about then was kind of the rise of really the developer relations, the kind of career we know of today. There used to be a lot of kind of technology evangelism, which kind of used to be very much kind of marketing driven. And then the idea of developer relations, which was trying to be more engineering, less marketing. not going to go into that too much because there's so many people have so many opinions about what's
Yeah.
DevRel, what's evangelism, what's marketing, what's engineering.
Yeah.
But the idea, certainly the career of developer relations, developer advocacy was
Mhm.
starting to be on the rise. And what folks like me, so I was like a Microsoft MVP, as Xamarin MVP, doing this community work. Basically, developer relations is the community work that folks were doing in their spare time. You do that full time for the company. That's pretty much the idea. And so I saw a job advertised. They were looking for a Xamarin developer advocate at Microsoft. And the job description was everything Jim does in his spare time, just full time. Go and speak at conferences, contribute to open source projects, review and update documentation, work with developers to solve their problems, blogs, videos, whatever. All the stuff I was doing for free, we'll pay you for it. So obviously I'm going to apply. It's a no-brainer. I was going to apply for that. So applied for it, chatted to them. They're like, yeah, we want you. Things got delayed because another person very well known in the Xamarin community got a job with them. It's like, well, obviously I'd employ that person. And then they came back and said, yeah, now we've got the headcount again. We want you. Please come and work with people you already know through the tech community. Yes. Right. Yes, I will. So I interviewed with Microsoft. One of the interviews was a bit of fun because the person interviewing me was the person who wrote the foreword for my book. So, it wasn't really one of those getting to know you interviews. Like, all right, how's it going? Good to catch up. And they said, yeah, we want you to be a Xamarin advocate, but we want you in the US. So that was kind of agreed right from the start. We want you in the US. Are you up for moving to Redmond? So Redmond in Washington State, the home of the Microsoft head office. And, it's like, why not? I've lived everywhere else in the world, why not move to the US? Especially as, it's the pay in the US is pretty good. US has its ups and its downs. But let's give this a try. And so one big difference between the US and the rest of the world is the visa system. Hong Kong, can I come to work in Hong Kong? Do you have a job? Yes, here's your visa. New Zealand, I've got a job in tech. Here's your visa. There's kind of this strong urge to get people into these countries. The US is, you want to live here? No, you can't possibly do that. No. And so I ended up moving back to the UK because it was easier to apply for a US visa when I'm in the UK than it would have been to transfer me to a New Zealand visa, because obviously I have a British passport. So getting a New Zealand visa to work in New Zealand while I wait to get my US visa was just overly complicated. They said, nope, we're going to move you back to the UK, do all the applications to the UK, and then ship you out to the US.
Oh, wow.
So we up to move back to the UK.
Got it. So you did not work for Microsoft in New Zealand at all? So in New Zealand, you did not work for, okay.
No, I knew them well. They flew me to Vietnam to speak at a conference there because I was an MVP in Xamarin, but no, never worked for Microsoft in New Zealand. They said no, they want me in the US, so they have to relocate me back to the UK.
Got it.
So Microsoft relocation, they look after you when they do this. So they moved us around the world. It was great.
Got it. So they paid you to move from New Zealand to UK. You were there for some time for visa and stuff. And then you finally moved to kind of Redmond.
Moved, yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes, they paid to move us.
Right. How many years ago did you come to US then?
So I've been here over 3.5 years now.
Oh.
So I was in the UK for a year and a half. So it was December. So left New Zealand December 2017, moved to the US August 2019. So
between that time, you were still working for Microsoft out of UK then?
So I was doing the job for Microsoft in the UK. I was living in Reading, which is just outside of London. It's where the Microsoft UK head office is. So I was living there. Well, I was living in a small village called Sonning. It's where George Clooney lives.
Nice.
And John Bonham from Led Zeppelin.
Right.
Occasionally we'll have a drink in a pub that George Clooney owns. Never saw him, but he owns the pub. So I was living in Reading just while we were applying for the US visa. And obviously US visas are problematic, as we know. So they started off with an H-1B, which is a bizarre system. If you've not come across H-1B before, bizarre system where they literally put everyone's name in a hat and just pull names out at random. They don't rank people based off education or job. It is pure random.
Yeah,
Which
yeah,
is just
exactly.
makes no sense.
So this is
Um,
interesting because I thought that H-1B cap is only for specific countries, like 60,000 per country, right? It's even applicable to people from the UK. This is like first
mhm.
time hearing, because
Yep.
I know like a lot of people from China and India are back in the queue because there are just so many people who are wanting to
Mhm.
come here, and they can't because there is a 60,000 cap on like
Global
how many
cap.
people.
It's a
Yeah,
global
but
cap.
oh,
Yeah.
it's a global cap. You're saying even for the UK, it's still there. Oh, okay.
Yep.
I did not
Yep.
know that.
Oh yeah. So that's whatever is 60,000. That's the total they do each year. No more.
Oh,
Applies to
yeah.
everyone. So yeah,
Oh,
applied for that. Didn't get it. But once I've been at Microsoft for a year, there's a thing called L1, which is where,
yeah.
yeah, that's where they can transfer you. So it's, we need this person in the US. They've worked for us overseas and they have some skill that no one else in the world can do. Therefore, we need them in the US. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, Microsoft. I guess going back to the point I made earlier, I've been very privileged. So working for Microsoft has been a huge privilege for the
Mhm.
visa process because they literally have teams of lawyers who do
Okay.
this every day. They
Right.
know what to write on the forms. They probably have such a good relationship with the visa officers that, oh, it's another 20 applications from Microsoft. Yeah, we're just going to stamp these without looking at them
Yeah.
because they know what they're doing. They
Right.
coached me in what to say. So as part of my L1 application process, I had to go to the consulate and have an interview. And so they
Mhm.
coached me in what to say and all that stuff and like stamp on the paper. There's your visa. Done.
Right.
And then Microsoft, they handle all the relocation. So it's,
Right.
when you're coming over, and they do everything. Funny story, actually. I was at a conference in the US, Kansas City DevConf, whilst we'd been through the visa application process. And while I was in Kansas City DevConf, our visas came, because the final part came through, and the relocation team phoned up my wife and said, right, when can you move? So
Hmm.
yeah, I was in the US at a developer conference, took a call from my wife to be told, yeah, when can I book the movers for? So, ended up trying to help her organize this. Well, I was in the US, she was back in the UK trying to organize the move. So got back from the conference, and then a week later turned around and came straight back again.
That's
Yeah,
the level
Microsoft just did
of
everything. Again, very privileged. It's definitely one of Jim's top tips if you want to move to the US is work for a big tech company.
big tech company. Yeah, that
Work for a
makes
small tech company, they may not better get the paperwork done. You don't want to come in on an L1 visa that's got a 3-year cap and then they can't renew it and you have to leave.
yeah,
Whereas a big tech company can support you.
yeah.
Obviously, if a big tech company lays you off, has happened, yeah, screwed. But a small company has less opportunity to support you in the same way.
Absolutely, totally there. Like, I would like to really get your, thoughts on, like, you must have seen like a lot of big tech companies nowadays are laying off people left, right, and center,
Yeah.
and it started somewhere late last year around Q4, and it is still going on even like as we speak in real time right now. What are your thoughts around like some of these people who have been immigrants, such as yourself and even I myself as well? But I've been staying in this country for a long period of time, so I'm kind of set from that perspective. But and again, I came on L1 visa, like how you stated as well, and got through all that green card and all that good stuff after that. Again, from a big tech company, and also, so I completely resonate with what you're saying. However, many people actually who have come on the H1B visa route have been into endless queues of getting green card, and some of the people that I know, even at Microsoft and other companies, have been in the country for maybe 20 years. They have their families, their homes, their cars, everything here, but they still are like temporary H1 visa because their green card is still like pending for maybe I don't know how long, 30, 40, 50 years, right? So in their lifetime, they're not even sure they'll ever get a permanent residency because it's endless queue. And then in the middle, this layoff like starts happening, and you might have also heard some stories or may have met some people who have gone through those kind of things. What are some of your suggestions for those people who are on visa, may not have, and they may have their life like in the US for the last 10, 20 years, and now after a layoff they only have 2 months available, and if they don't find a job, they're back to their previous like country, and they have to leave back every like house and car or whatever, right? It's a big a change for people. Like, so one change is where company takes care of you, they're transferring you, they're doing all the visa, etc. And then there is this change where you have been forced out of a country which you knew for last 10, 20 years and built your family, your assets, your like whole life around this country, and now you are kind of being pushed out because of no fault of yours. Like layoffs just happen. It's a bad timing. But any thoughts there? Like, have you seen some of those things happening, or any suggestions there?
Yeah, I mean, the whole process is needlessly cruel. It's part of the American immigration system, which is terrible. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, there's one of the bad sides about America is there's certainly a vocal group of people who don't seem to like the idea of immigration, despite these people being immigrants themselves or from their families are immigrants. They'll boast about how they're third generation immigrant from some country, but we don't like immigrants anymore,
Yeah.
which is terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is needlessly cruel. Unfortunately, it's kind of one of the when you move to a country, I feel you do have to understand these rules and accept these rules.
Yeah.
So, when I moved to Bermuda, for example, Bermuda has that if you don't have a job, you're out. You can live all your life. When you lose your job, you're out. That's it, you're out. You don't get permanent residency ever.
Ever.
And so you kind of, when you move to a country, you kind of have to keep that in mind.
Right.
I mean, the whole green card thing is ridiculous for some countries. I mean, I was quite lucky, because they allocate, well, there's so many green cards, and there's a maximum percentage per country. And I got mine in the later stages of the COVID pandemic because people weren't coming over, so they had spares. But I've certainly
Right.
seen the numbers. There was so from India, I think it's like a 100-year waiting
100
list
years or
for green
something like that.
cards.
Yeah.
Something,
Yeah.
yeah. So you've got no chance of doing it. So it is one of those unfortunate realities that when you move to a country, you have to keep in mind that this can happen. So
Sure.
I think my advice for anyone who's looking to make the move is you have to come with open eyes. And if you build your life here, you have to be aware it can go away.
Yeah.
I have my opinions on the tech layoffs, which I'm not going to publicly voice.
Sure. Sure.
If a company can make hundreds of billions of dollars, maybe it shouldn't be laying off people. Maybe they should be considering keeping people on for longer who have
Yeah.
these issues.
Right.
But yeah, really, there are plenty of people hiring, but the
Yeah.
problem is the small companies that hire aren't necessarily going to be able to take on the visas. So I would hope there's a lot of small companies now who are realizing there's some great tech talent out there
Yeah.
if they can get this process. So, any lawyers listening who do immigration, maybe approach some of these smaller tech companies and say, we can help you get hold of some fantastic developers if you
Yes.
do immigration. But yeah, it kind of has to be the first question you ask. If you're on an H-1B visa and you've lost your job,
Yeah.
this is very important that you don't even apply to a company unless they can say we sponsor visas. And again, I guess a note to anyone listening who's a hiring manager, put that on your job description. Put it on your careers page. Be very clear whether you can sponsor a visa or not, and don't waste these people's time. Do not interview someone. Do not put someone through that loop of multiple interviews if you cannot sponsor their H-1B visa.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it is a tough time. It feels I read a blog post the other day about how it feels very copycat. Yeah. Oh, they're laying people off.
Let me
Maybe
do
I
that.
should lay people off. Maybe I should do this.
Yeah.
This whole macroeconomic climate, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. But so yeah, it's a shame. There's a lot of people looking for work. There are a lot of jobs out there. There are still more jobs than there are people to do that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But it's
I-
just
I-
getting
No.
those people connected
Right.
is the hard
Right.
part.
I was just kind of reviewing the kind of the whole climate that's going on right now, and what I found out was that they keep saying that there are a lot more jobs than the people, but lot of those jobs are actually these people who are highly qualified, who are like mostly like undergraduates in computer science or masters, etc. A lot of these people who are getting laid off, but the jobs that are out there will be underemployed actually, because many of these jobs are like not even white collar jobs. They are probably like delivery boys or mostly like unskilled or semi-skilled kind of jobs that are mostly there majority of.
No. There's definitely more jobs in tech than people who are looking. So
Mhm.
when you actually look at the stats of how many open tech jobs there are in the US,
Mhm.
That's still substantially more than the number of people who've been laid off. You look on the big tech layoffs, the 100,000 people laid off, but
Yeah.
they're kind of, you hear the talks about, oh, there's still 1 million tech jobs going. I mean, Microsoft, for example, is in the process of laying off 10,000 people.
Oh, really?
And yet they're still hiring. I think that last month they had 674 open positions, so they're still hiring. So there is plenty there. I mean, if I pick up my phone and look on LinkedIn, there's a whole stack of jobs on there.
And that is very interesting. You said, right, this LinkedIn thing. So there are a lot of fake job postings on LinkedIn. I'll have to tell you that
Yeah.
there's just tons of them. So you may see that there are multiple jobs, and I can tell you, I myself have seen some of the listings that in one company they'll say it as a remote, and it'll show up in Austin, and same job will show up in all different states. So US has 50 states, right?
Yeah.
So one job becomes 50. That's not 50 job. It's just one job.
Yes.
All they're trying to say is, since it is a remote, you can be in any of those 50 states, but they have replicated it across. So this immediately expands the number of jobs, because the moment you put it as a remote, they say you are remote, and then they add Canada as well. Like you can work from Canada and US, and you could be remote completely North America as long as you are there. So I think those challenges are there, and sometimes I believe that companies, of course, they have to do right sizing and restructuring all the time. I think it's important to efficiently deploy your capital and do the right thing. I think many times what happens is that multiple groups that are there within the companies don't talk to each other quite often, so they work in different silos. So you don't even know what skill set these guys are providing, what skill sets are here, what product they are working, what product they are working. So when the top down requirement comes in that, hey, cut down 10%, cut down 20%, or cut down 5%, whatever, they just go with their own lens and their own silo and go cut it down, rather than repurposing the people that, okay, I have extra staffing, I can use these people who have this kind of skill set and redeploy them basically in another group which may be looking for that kind of skill set. It may not be perfect match all the time, but it will be still better than putting these people on the curb and saying, good luck, here is your severance. You got this job, you knew what the visa process was. And so I know it's tough for everything. I'm not saying that companies, it's not tough for the companies, it is tough for them as well, because your reputation takes a hit. People are a little bit now suspicious, like, oh, really, do I really want to go there? Or I may be the next one on the block, because who would try to risk themselves? And then the smaller startups, as you said, right, they are not capitalized enough, they don't have revenue streams enough that they can even sustain if this keeps going for a longer period of time, the macroeconomic tightening that is going on right now. And many startups will go belly up, actually. At least the big tech will still sustain because they have money and cash reserves and whatnot. Startups, I mean, basically, you're going to suck the lifeblood out of them. And before long, like, many of them may not even exist by the end of the year, if this continues, actually.
Yeah, I
So
mean, certainly with a lot of people laid off, there's a lot of folks forming their own startups. So there's a lot of
yeah,
people who are going, you know what, I don't have a job anymore. What have I got to lose? Let's start my own company.
yeah, this is a good time. I think this is a great point that you said, because adversity brings a lot of interesting skill sets out of people, and this is a perfect storm, because a lot of people are getting out. Many of them are very frustrated, but if like-minded people can come together and form something of their own, especially if they have a software engineering skills, and as you said, right, nowadays a lot of things are available in open source. You don't need like enterprise grade software to start building something. You could just spin off an Azure or AWS or GCP account, and you basically are starting from the day one with all the services available to you. And a lot of these companies have like free accounts, right? So if you are doing a startup, you can get into that. Microsoft has something known as BizSpark or Spark Biz account, something like that.
So we used to have that. We now have what's called Founders Hub.
Oh,
So if you're a startup, I can't remember. I think like the first tier is like $5,000 of Azure credit or something.
something.
It goes up from there, and you can get up to like a whole big stack of Azure credits and
Yeah.
mentoring and all other bits and pieces.
Right,
So
right.
there is a lot of support there for founders around things like cloud credits. Obviously, that doesn't pay your own personal bills. And I do feel the US is one of the worst countries to form a startup because healthcare.
Yeah, it's not taken
Rest
care
of the
of.
world, you can form a startup. You've got healthcare. US is like, oh no, you have to pay for that.
Yeah.
So that can be problematic. Plus the visa situation. You've got
Yeah.
60 days to get out of the country. You've got no
Yeah.
chance of doing a startup.
Right.
But there is an opportunity. Definitely, there's opportunities now for a lot of people to start building these startups. I mean, let's say, how many of them will last a year? Yeah, every day you see another startup using ChatGPT.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably will make, if you get 1,000 startups, there might be 10 that come out of it that are actually
Yeah.
successful. But that's kind of part of the startup way. It's the throw it at the wall, see what sticks kind of model.
Right.
You kind of hope some of them are successful.
Right. I think this has been fantastic having you on board today, and you're sharing your views. I'd love to, have us talk around some other specific areas, like you talked about Chat GTP, or even areas on open source that you kind of are very passionate about and working, etc. So this was a great pleasure to have you on board today and talk through your life journey and learning about like you're starting from the UK all the way, and now you're finally landed up in the US, working from a big tech company such as Microsoft, and enjoying your work, like what you used to do it in your spare time and free time. Now you get paid to do that kind of work. So you're living a dream. Basically, not many people want to do that, actually. So I'd like to thank you once again, for taking time to talk to us today. I'm sure this will inspire not many people, and would love to, invite you again to like talk about some specific areas around Chat GTP, open source technology, and other areas that you may be passionate about, so that we can share our views and encourage the next generation of people who are wanting to build their career in the tech, or pursue their passions, or just understanding like how do you, the life is there in the US, how do you come as an immigrant, how do you succeed in this kind of a place, and things along those lines. So once again, thank you very much, Jim, and any final thoughts that you may have before we wrap it up for today?
I think it's just my one advice for life in general is try all the things. That's part of why I've been around the world, why I've done a number of different variations of tech careers, is say yes, try the thing. If you see an opportunity that looks like fun, do it. Don't be afraid to try things.
Right. No, this is very profound message, and I always say this to different people that we need to expand our horizons, and unless we try different things, we won't know if it is good or bad, or would we like it or not. So just ignoring something, saying that this is not good, or I don't like it, unless I experience it, it's very hard to say, because sometimes you have an acquired taste. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. So I'm a vegetarian. I have never had any alcohol or smoking, or non-vegetarian food or fish or anything like that throughout my life, and that's how my family has always been. And the first country for me to go was Singapore and Malaysia. That was only a couple of days, so I managed it, no problem. And then I went to Japan in 2005. I lived there for 2 years. And Japan is like completely different from India, where I was going from. And Japan, like, I mean, so I did not know Japanese. I know English, and I learned a little bit of Japanese. And there, at least back in the day, like I'm talking about 15 years ago, right? The local shops and all wouldn't speak English, so it was only pure Japanese. And I don't know Japanese. They don't know English. So I had to use a lot of hand gestures and this, and many times, still remember one restaurant I went. And back in the day, I come from a middle class family, so every dollar was very important for me. Like I was always used to do the calculation. Oh, this is $1. This is how it costs there. Should I buy this thing or not? Right? That thing was always there in my mind. So I went to this restaurant. They were giving a plate for probably $10. That was the like 1,000 yen. That's the kind of roughly calculation. So $1 is equal to 100 yen. That's the kind of currency conversion. So it was like 1,000 yen, which is $10 basically plate. And I asked them, no egg, no fish, no meat. I had to tell each and everything, because here I say no non-vegetarian food, people will understand. Okay, no vegetarian is non-vegetarian, no non-vegetarian. There I had to explain egg, no, fish, no, meat, no. So I explained them all those things. Maybe they missed it or not. They bring me and I said, whatever you have got, bring me. So they brought me like a boiled rice, right? Because everything else had something in the it. And I looked at it, and I like flavor in my food, like, so I like spices, and I like sauces and whatnot. So I can't eat like boiled like rice, like that's not good enough. So I said, hey, do you not have anything else? They got me like miso soup, which is very tasty, and it is also vegetarian. And then they said, okay, yeah, we had something else. So the lady comes back, She has an egg in her hand. I mean to say, like in a plate.
Mhm.
She basically literally cracks the egg in front of me and drops that egg on the rice that I have, and she says, "Wow, this is a delicacy." And I am like pure vegetarian.
So if you don't even eat eggs, a raw
Yeah.
egg is not a thing you want to be eating, is it?
Yeah, I said,
Oh.
okay, God, this is like, so that's the memory I still remember back in the day. And in Japan, they used like beer was very big. Like every like party or every like almost like after 5 p.m. it was like beer party. Like they used to say
Mm.
kampai. Kampai was like cheers kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I don't even drink. So I just drink water, keep drinking water and doing that. So but the experience was very fantastic. Japanese like trains were spick and span. They were always right on the dot on the time. I used to drive a lot of bicycle. That was the only time in my life I was 69 kg. I have never been 69 kg ever in my life. I'm 5'8", and I was 69 only when I was in 12th grade, actually in my school days. After that, I've never been 69. And if I tell my wife that I was 69, she said, no, you're joking. Not possible. Because right now I am close to like 88 or 90, right? So no
2
matter what.
years of nothing you can really eat, and cycling everywhere is going to do that, isn't it?
Yeah, so it was very good experience. And that was early in my career. So a great experience. And then I actually went again back to Japan in around I think 18 or 19, that's when I went again. But this time I was in Tokyo. This Japan was different from the back in the day Japan because now everyone was speaking English. Even in the local stores and all, people kind of understood English. At that time, they did not. So, and this time around, I was working for a company. They were my client, Rakuten. It's an e-commerce company in Japan. They're based here as well in the US. And they had mandated that everyone who works for them has to speak English, and they were used to conduct TOEFL examinations. That unless you pass the TOEFL examination, you can't even do that. And they put it on me also. I said, "What? I'm going to give a TOEFL examination just to prove that I can speak English? Are you kidding me? What do you think I'm speaking right now with you right now? Like, are you sure?" I said, yes, I am Asian heritage person, but English has been a first language for me. I mean, all the time. And that's not at all like, I don't know if I can write an exam or not, but I feel very, petrified that you're asking me to write like I've studied, like I'm teaching in universities. I go to seminars and conferences where I only speak English actually. And I'm trying to speak in Hindi, which is my native language, so that I don't forget that like it's as good as I speak English.
Yeah.
So that was fun, right? So that was some experience. So what I was just trying to give as a takeaway was that, as you pointed out, Jim, that unless you try new things, you wouldn't know it is good or not, whether it will stick or not. So open up your horizon, go talk to different people, try different experiences. Life is short, and unless you have all those experiences, I wish I had as many country experiences as yours, because I used to tell I have traveled. So I have lived in Japan, Singapore, Thailand, China, UK, India, all the cities, US, multiple cities like Seattle, Bay Area, Texas, Austin, New York, New Jersey, etc. And I thought I have done, and Montreal, yeah, I've lived in Montreal as well, Canada. But listening to you, like you have much more diverse, experiences than me for sure. And that's the beauty of these real talks. We want to bring real people in. So pleasure again to having chatted with you. Would love to see if you have anybody else references. Please, connect with our team to share their experiences on different topics, etc. And I'll let you go right now, and have a wonderful evening and rest of your weekend. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. It's been fun.
Same here. Thank you.